Education for being here to protect public education for all students and to stand up for our students in our public schools. It is my pleasure to introduce our State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tony Thurmond, who will open this press conference.
Thank you, Liz. Good morning, everyone. I want to start today by talking about some great educators, our teachers, our one-to-one aides, and those who work with many of our students in programs like special education. As we're sitting here, they're in the classroom right now, working with our students. And I want to show my appreciation and give my thanks to them. This week I heard from some educators in special education, and they shared with me their fear and their consternation because of what they heard about a threat to end the U.S. Department of Education. They said, if the U.S. Department of Education is abolished, does that mean that we're getting rid of special education services for California students? And let me be clear, we will not be ever getting rid of special education services in the great state of California. And we call on President-elect Trump and the members of Congress to reaffirm their commitment to public education. To make a comment about abolishing the Department of Education, is a clear threat to what our students need, the chance to get a great education and have a great life. Let's be clear, without a plan for what will replace the Department of Education, the statement is being said that California would lose some almost $8 billion in funding for special education programs, for Title I programs that serve low-income students all across our state. And so we will not allow that to happen. The law does not allow that to happen. The Individuals with Disabilities Act guarantees the right for students to have access to a free and appropriate education and to the special education services that are laid out in their IEP, their individual education plan. And so we've reached out to members of Congress, and we'll continue to reach out to all the members of Congress to ask them to stand for education throughout this state and this country. And I'm grateful for the folks who are here, standing for public education here in our state and standing up for our students. Let's just put it in context for a second. The Department of Education administers and monitors the federal financial aid that goes to our students, the FAFSA program. It allocates the Title I dollars that go to low-income students in public schools and low-income students in private schools. Let me be clear, this is not a partisan issue. This is an issue of continuing to assure that students have access to the resources that they are entitled to under the law. And we will continue to do that. And we will work with the members of Congress to ask them to stand and support our students. And if through some set of circumstances, the Department of Education goes away, we are prepared to introduce legislation that would guarantee funding for California schools and California education. And so, I want to thank all those who are here today showing their support for California students and California education. This is an issue that will affect students all over the country, and California is going to lead the way to protect our students and to protect students in other parts of our country. So let me begin by acknowledging some great legislators who are here with us today. I'm honored that we have the chair of the Assembly Education Committee and a great colleague and friend and a great colleague for public education who provides some remarks. Please welcome Assemblymember Al Mirasucci.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Thurmond, for your leadership in bringing together all of the education community throughout the state of California to stand up for public education. My name is Al Mirasucci, and I have the privilege of chairing the Assembly Education Committee. And I'm here to stand with all of the educators, with our superintendent, and the entire state of California, and our 6 million California public school students to stand up for public education. We are ready for California versus Trump round 2. We've been through this drill before, and we know what each and every one of us need to do to protect all of our kids, all of our students, and especially the most vulnerable students that Donald Trump is targeting. You know, with this Project 2025 and all of his campaign rhetoric, whether it's the immigrant students, our special education students, our low-income students, our LGBTQ students. You know, I teach U.S. government at my local community college, El Camino College in Torrance, and most of my students are Latino and immigrants. And many of them, you know, we had a discussion about the election results on Wednesday, and many of them, you know, were expressing their anger. But many of them were also scared. They're scared about what's going to happen to their family, their loved ones. They're scared about what's going to happen to themselves. And so it is our job, every teacher, every school board member, every principal, every elected representative in the state of California who believes in public education, it is time for us to stand up to protect all of these kids. And so I want to thank the superintendent for inviting all of us to come together today, because we know that when we are facing a bully who is targeting our most vulnerable students, we all need to stand up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Mirasucci. You know, education is the bedrock of our society. What civilized nation would tear down an organization that has built in its tradition helping every student to get access to a quality education? Thank you for that, Assembly Mayor Mirasucci, and for your great leadership. This next person is someone, as a legislator, who's championing important legislation in so many areas, but in particular, I want to acknowledge recognizing students who have different needs and special needs. And you know, we have the pleasure of supporting deaf and blind students at our state special schools. Some of those students have IEPs, and someone who is championing the work at our state special schools is a great leader who we are honored to hear from now. Please welcome Senator Wahab, who will provide some remarks.
Good morning, folks. I'm Dr. Aisha Wahab, and I am very proud to be here, and I want to highlight some of the concerns that were shared. First and foremost, I'm very proud to be from California and also represent California. You know, I represent the East Bay and the South Bay, and we actually have Title I schools in my district, right? My district is considered one of the most diverse districts in the nation. And most importantly, I do want to highlight the leadership from Superintendent Tony Thurmond. What this election means and the results of this election actually put a lot of things in jeopardy, right? I think that a lot of people were, from all angles that you heard, was fear-mongering. What will happen if this takes place? If we are unable to get the seat that we needed? And the honest truth is, with a potential complete sweep, there's a lot of social services and education budgetary cuts that are probably going to happen, right? That is the first thing to happen. And when the economy declines, and let's not fool ourselves, we are seeing changes in the economy, and not necessarily for the most, in the benefit of the most vulnerable community members. When we're talking about whether it's Social Security, whether it's special needs, whether it's vulnerable communities across the board, we are very, very nervous. You have seen the calls from a state leadership perspective that we are trying to ensure that we fully fund and develop funds to protect what we have progressed in California. Yes, the California model is not like the rest of the state, right? And when we're talking about students, and I want to be very, very clear, I grew up in the foster care system, right? And when you are bounced from home to home, to home to home and go from school to school. And even if you are not in the foster care system and you are struggling to afford your rent, and again, you are moving from city to city to find the cheapest rent, that doesn't create stability for anybody, right? And when kids are struggling, usually schools are their foundation. Schools are one of the most important, stable communities that they can actually have. If they don't feel safe at home, they feel safe at school. If they don't feel like they're being heard or anything like that, and we have to respect the teachers that we have that become the guardians and the champions of these kids, and specifically those that are the most vulnerable, which are our special needs kids, right? These are folks that don't actually know how to advocate for themselves and don't often speak up for themselves and so much more. And what Superintendent Tony Thurman is trying to do here is prioritize the needs of those kids, of those teachers. And that changes lives. That is incredibly important. And for California to be able to commit to that, I want to highlight the fact that just in this last year, the budget in California, we tried very, very hard to hold the line when it comes to education. Across the board, even if you took a look at this ballot proposition in this most recent election, Prop 2, it passed. Republicans and Democrats agree education needs to be fully funded and prioritized. And we don't know what's going to happen next. And we know that we have seen from this leader mocking of individuals with special needs, a disregard for people of different backgrounds, and a divide and conquer mentality that does not stand in California. And I'm very proud to be with this coalition, to stand with Superintendent Tony Thurman, to say that we are going to champion the line that defends our most needy. So I really appreciate all the work that you do. I appreciate all of you guys for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Wild, for really breaking it down, that Title I program to support low-income students, that the Department of Education interprets federal law and the laws that are in place to help foster youth and others. Thank you for that and for your steadfast support of public education. It's time that we hear from an educator and someone who can speak on behalf of educators. Jeff Freitas, as he often tells me, is first and foremost a math teacher, and I'm grateful for that. He's also the president of the California Federation of Teachers. He's speaking today on behalf of teachers, classified staff, college and community college staff, and the California Labor Federation. And the legislation that his organization has sponsored would help to increase salaries for all school staff by the year 2030. That's what should be in play right now, not tearing down the institutions of education, but how do we build it up? Please welcome the president of the California Federation of Teachers, Jeff Freitas.
Thank you. As the president of CFT, as the secretary treasurer of the California Labor Federation Union, we represent workers in the education world. We're united for justice as a union. We're united for education because that's our jobs. As was stated, I'm a high school math teacher by trade. That's where I started because I wanted to help students. So the last couple of years, our messaging was to providing, which is what we do, provide a safe and welcoming environment for all students. And now that's under attack by the president-elect. He has targeted our immigrant students, and we want to make sure we have a safe space for every student regardless of their immigration status, which the Supreme Court has ruled. We want to make sure there's a safe space for every LGBTQ plus student, and those students are under attack. We want to make sure that the true history of how this country has been built is taught so we don't repeat those atrocities that occurred, and how students of color and their heritage have had different paths. We need to understand those different paths so we don't repeat that. That is what it's about, the safe and welcoming for all students, so that we can learn together. We can actually create a space to learn, and that is so important. And because education unions, education workers unions, because unions have fought for public education, because they have fought to protect funding and to increase funding as we have in the past, like Prop 50 and Prop 30, or 55 and 30 in our history, because we have fought to protect these rights for all these students, we are now under attack. And if you look at Project 2025, you will see eliminating collective bargaining rights for workers, for all workers, and that's why we're here today. We're united to defeat that. We're united to protect that, because it's those protections in collective bargaining that we have the right and the privilege to be able to protect our students. That is the protection. It is all connected, and we are all together. We must defend public education. That is the bedrock of our democratic society. That is how we provide that to all of our students. We must protect public education, and the funding for public education, as you see, will be under attack. We must protect public education because the Department of Education has a civil rights department, and that would be under attack if we don't defend that. So I am honored to be here today, to be invited today, both as the CFT president, as well as the California Labor Federation Union Secretary Treasurer on behalf of Lorena Gonzalez, to be united with all of these people, with all of these groups, with all of these speakers, to make sure that we defend our education, our public education. And let's not forget, 1 out of 7 students live in California. That is a huge population, and we are the 5th largest economy in the world in California, because we have been succeeding. So thank you, and I'm proud to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, President Freitas, and for continuing to amplify the important role that the U.S. Department of Education plays around civil rights in interpreting the law and ensuring the protection of our students. We have seen, as you point out, so much hate, and our students have also experienced that hate, racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, hate and bias against our LGBTQ+ students. And again, to tear down and abolish an organization that provides protections for our students is a threat to the well-being of our students and our families and of Americans. And we should be standing up for all Americans and giving them the right to an education. And the fear-mongering that is already occurring about our immigrant families that would break up our families and cause students to go to school and be fearful that maybe when they come home, their parents aren't going to be there for them, is not in the best interest of supporting the American people and those who attend our schools. And so we're not going to allow that. We will stand with immigrant families in this state and continue to bolster the role that the U.S. Department of Education can play in supporting our students. And so in that way, I'm excited to introduce another partner whose work has been incredible in supporting bilingual education all across our state, an incredible longtime school board member who has worked on all aspects of programs to support California students, and is a great leader from Californians Together, one of our partners. Please welcome Shirlene Cruz Gonzalez from Californians Together.
Well, I wish I could say good morning, but I think we're all feeling this. So yes, I represent Californians Together. We're a statewide coalition that advocates for English learners, multilingual learners, and immigrant students across the state. And I want to start with a story. On September 28, 2017, a father in LA, in Highland Park, was dropping off his 3 daughters at school. They went to a charter school. And as he dropped them off and walked away, I swooped in and picked them up. This was, think about it, February 28th. This was a little over a month after the incoming president was sworn in last time. So think about how quickly that happened, right? Luckily, there was a lot of support, rapid response, legal services. He was eventually reunited with his family. But that should never have happened. Jeff talked about federal court case, Pyler versus Doe. There's legal court case that says every child in this country, regardless of status, should have a free right to public education. And that means that our schools are protected spaces. and that families and their students should feel comfortable and know that when they go to school, when they're walking to school, coming home, that they will be safe and protected. That goes for immigrant students, for LGBTQ students, for students, transgender students, all the students that we've seen that have been under attack. And so it is really our obligation to ensure that our systems are supporting those families and creating those safe and welcoming spaces. And there are certain things that we can do. So for example, at the state level in 2017, we passed a law, SB 699, that put many of these protections that are in federal case law in our statutes in California. But we have a lot of new school board members, a lot of new teachers, a lot of new administrators, and they don't know about these things, right? So it's not enough to know that we have laws in the books. We have to work together in coalition and ensure that our superintendents, our school board members, our teachers know what they're supposed to do to protect these rights. And so I call on all of us to work together, build out a strong coalition so that we can make sure that from the state level to those 1,000 school districts, to those hundreds of thousands of classrooms, we are all ensuring that our students and their families feel safe and welcome. And so I call on all of us to be all in for safe schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. You know, I'm thinking about, how many grants go through the Department of Education to support schools. And this next speaker is a Sac City Unified Trustee, Chinua Rhodes, who is in the position of allocating those grants to our students. The Title I grants, most recently a number of ESSER grants and grants to accelerate learning. He's a champion for our students. He comes from Sac City as a former student, is a parent, and continues to keep students at the forefront of everything we do. Please welcome Sac City Unified Trustee Chinua Rhodes.
Good morning, everyone. I'm also joined in solidarity with my colleague, Jasjit Singh. Today, we're gathered here to make one thing very clear. We will protect public education and defend our families. In California, we stand together, shoulder to shoulder. We are the largest education system in America. We're the 5th largest economy in the world and a global engine of innovation, and will we continue to be that? As California rises, though, we call on our leaders at the local, state, and federal level to understand that this is not just a political battle. It is a moral one. Our schools should not abandon the most needy. When attacks are made against the very programs that shield and support low-income students, special education, and civil rights protections, we must act. Our children cannot and will not be pawns in a political pendulum shift. Their futures are not bargaining chips. Eliminating vital agencies would remove protections that guarantee equal opportunity, strip supports from those most in need. And hear me, folks, these protections are not luxuries. They are promises written in the fabric of our nation, and we will uphold them. And I'm going to leave you with this in closing. Democracy is the foundation on which we build our republic. And public education is the cornerstone of that democracy. And California will continue to lead the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustees Rhodes and Singh, for really breaking it down on the local level by bringing students into the classroom and educators and families. I think you articulated the most important civics lesson that we can articulate and reiterate, that the foundation of our society is an education, that the foundation of democracy is an education. Again, none of this is about partisanship. We're putting students at the forefront and lifting up that this organization, the U.S. Department of Education, that has a storied tradition of bringing grants and funding and research and advising school districts to work through all of the difficult questions of the day in education, must be sustained. And again, we are calling upon President-elect Trump and the U.S. Congress to reaffirm your commitment to public education. With that, we're happy to take a few questions, and any of the folks who are here can take questions. If there are any questions, we're happy to take them at this time.
Early in your presentation, Superintendent, you had mentioned we are planning to introduce legislation, combat these changes that may be coming up. Could you explain, in due respect, who are we and what type of legislation that you plan to propose?
Yeah, to reiterate, the question is about what kind of legislation might be introduced to intervene in this situation, and I would call the legislation as contingency. Things that have been threatened, to take away the funding for special education in Title I, that requires an act of Congress. And so our first act is to be in touch with members of Congress. And actually, I and us, many of us have been in touch with many members of Congress already who are willing to stand for public education. Should the worst happen, and there will be a move to take away the $8 billion that California enjoys from the federal government for education, I'm prepared to sponsor legislation that would call on the California State Legislature and the governor to backfill that funding, to preserve and protect that funding for the students of California. And so more to follow. We'll see where things end up, but we are already prepared to take legislative action and steps to protect funding in education. And again, I just want all those educators to hear the message that we will not allow there to be any sunset of special education programs or programs that support young people who are living in poverty. We will make sure that California continues to provide full funding and great programs for California students, and we will continue to call for efforts to reverse the call for abolishing the U.S. Department of Education.
William Malhoff from Sacramento be here. A number of California leaders have come out very strongly against Trump in the last couple days. Gavin Newsom, A.G. Bonta, you obviously today, and with your candidacy for governorship, I'm curious to see what role, if any, that plays in you coming out so publicly against Trump.
Happy to talk to you about, my candidacy outside of these walls. Today's not about that. Today is about the facts. And the facts are that President-elect Trump has stated his intention to abolish the U.S. Department of Education. And as the state superintendent of the largest system in this nation, I see that as a threat to California students and families, and quite frankly, to students everywhere in our nation. This is not a partisan issue. And if President Trump were to abolish the Department of Education and the funding that is administered to states all across our nation, this will be a threat to students everywhere, in California, in other states, in rural communities, quite frankly, in communities that probably supported President Trump's candidacy. But it's not about that. It's about ensuring that every student be supported and given the opportunity to live the American dream. And in many ways, that starts with having access to a quality education. Hi.
Hi, I have a question for you. So I just recently ran for school board in Saxony Unified School District, but a big part of my work is working for undocumented families and students. And so the question that I have to you as a mom from Saxony Unified School District, meaning Safe Haven District, is I appreciate everything that all of you called out today and the seriousness that there is for our vulnerable students and the stress and mental health crisis that we're facing and how we have to add this layer. As a state, Tony, what can I, or how can I with the work that I do in the field, how can I work with you, but also ask that you create that same safe haven approach for our state versus expecting our school districts to do it individually?
Thank
And
you.
I hope that I didn't put pressure on, but you know.
You didn't put any pressure on me, but we're used to pressure. You know, you can't control where pressure comes from, but you control how you respond to it. And this is our first time meeting, and so what you may not know is that throughout 16 years of elected life, I have sponsored legislation to support immigrant families. I'm the descendant of immigrants. You know, my grandparents were born in Panama and Jamaica and Colombia. In Detroit, Michigan, by way of Mississippi. And, you know, immigrants come to this country wanting the opportunity to work and to have education. Like my grandparents who cleaned bathrooms for a living because they wanted a better life for their children. And it was through education that that becomes possible. And so throughout my time in the legislature and other bodies of government, we have created protections from a statewide level to protect our immigrant families and to create safety and sanctuary for them. And so, you know, in the days and weeks to come, we'll be announcing some partnerships where we invite leaders who want to work on issues to support our immigrant families to do so together as these threats continue to roll out, that we will talk about strategies. I do want to give Sheila Neen an opportunity to come up if there's anything more you want to say, and any of our legislators if there's anything more, but we will look for ways to create the sanctuary as you have asked on a statewide basis.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I did mention at AB 699, which was passed in 2017, and did exactly that, right? I put a lot of these requirements to ensure that students have access to public education, that district adopt policies happen, right? So that's on the law, those books and laws, but we do have 1,000 school districts, right? And when somebody like ICE enforcement comes to a school site and your front office person doesn't know what to do, right? That's about implementation, right? And so there's a lot of work that has to happen at district levels. So school board members ensuring that they are, one, being very outspoken about what they need to do, reaffirming their policies, and budgeting time and space to ensure that your staff know what to do and are trained, right? Same thing with your staff, right? Your site staff especially have to have the understanding and knowledge of what are those legal obligations, and also what they should do if something happens, and next steps. Along with, we have so much money for community schools, thinking about how can we integrate, right? How can we pull those families in and make them feel safe and welcoming to those community schools? There's so much out there to do, and I'm looking forward to working with our superintendent to make sure this happens across all 1,000 school districts.
Thank you, Sheila Neen. Any other questions?
Denise
Yes.
Hill here, KCRA 3 News Sacramento. I do want to ask, President-elect Trump has not even taken office at this moment. Why is it important for you guys to have this press conference right now when none of these policies have taken effect at this time?
You know, I'll just speak for myself and any other leaders who want to speak, we welcome you, but I believe in getting ahead of things. We cannot wait for that to happen. President-elect Trump, while not sworn in yet, has already started selecting the members of his cabinet and has articulated a policy position that is well documented and has been for more than a year. And so given the magnitude and the impact of what has been proposed, we cannot be flat-footed. And that's why you heard me say today that we've begun the outreach to members of Congress, that we are prepared to sponsor legislation in this January legislative session. But we have to educate the public about this, and we cannot wait, because if we wait, look at what might befall California students and, quite frankly, students everywhere in the nation. And so there's a fierce urgency of now, and we are out educating the people about why this is a bad decision, not just for California kids, but for young people everywhere. And we will continue to accelerate that message. Let me just see if any of the other speakers want to address. Assembly Member Mirasucci.
Thank you very much. Like the superintendent stated, you know, we need to act now. I shared my classroom experience about the students are scared now And so it's incumbent for, all of our schools, all of our school districts to be educating, our students, our families about what their rights are, and how, as several speakers talked about, how, all students, regardless of their immigration status, have a constitutional right to a free public education. And we need to educate that. But of course, we also, and this, thanks to Superintendent Thurman, this is part of a statewide effort to get ready for California versus Trump round 2, because we need to get ready now for what's going to start on January 20th.
To summarize what they said, it's a great question. Our opponent has shown their playbook, and I'm borrowing this from somebody else, not originally me. It's Project 2025. When I say opponent to public education, opponent to all of our students, that's what I say, opponent. We have their playbook. We're trying to create our best offense against that.
Yes, hi.
So speaking of Project 2025, one of the things, proposals in there is a federal parental rights rule, which is popular in some parts of California as well. If that is something that comes down the line, how is California going to deal with that? And is that something that California would try and fight?
Well, for starters, I would like to just lift up the important work that California has already done with the Safety Act, to say that there's never a time when we should be asking educators to forcibly out a student who may choose to or identify as LGBTQ+. Our educators are here to teach our kids, and they're great caring adults to help our kids. And we know that the programs that forcibly out kids, more times than not, lead kids to consider many choices like suicide. 40% of our LGBTQ+ kids have considered or attempted suicide. And so, as we're standing up for education, we're standing up for all of our kids. We're standing against any form of hate. And I'm grateful for the work of the legislature and our office and the governor on the Safety Act. And if you read the Safety Act closely, there's nothing in it that suggests that parents lose their rights. It simply says that we should never ask educators or any other person to forcibly out a student. And so we respect parent rights in this state. A lot of us are parents, and we care about these conversations that should take place between parents and their children. But why would we ask educators or anyone else to forcibly out kids when we know that the outcomes could lead to suicide? On that note, I want to just remind those, as it was raised, that many of us feel stress about a lot of these things, and families feel stress about the things that they hear, about the loss of education, about detention-style immigration raids. And I just want to remind everyone who can hear these broadcasts that in this state we offer 988 as a way of talking to someone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you need to talk to someone, if you need to get connected to a therapist, it's a free service. It's 24/7. You can text or call 988. In our schools, we have the Community Schools Program, $4 billion for wraparound supports. We have the Children's Behavioral Health Initiative, another $4 billion for more mental health supports. We have scholarships for those who want to become mental health clinicians, so we have more clinicians in our school. California is forward-thinking and is offering things that will help our students recover from the challenges of the pandemic, recover from the impacts of poverty, like the billions that we provide our schools for learning recovery, accelerating learning, and more tutoring, and a longer school day, professional development for our educators, after-school programs, and expanded learning, universal meals. We will continue to provide programs like these to support our students. While others demonize education and educators, we will oppose that demonization and continue to provide programs to help California students wherever they are.
I do have one other question since you're on that topic.
Yes.
Because you did mention special education too, and you did just
Yes.
mention, protecting things like food service, food programs. So that would extend to English as a second language, maybe athletic programs, as you did mention, after-school programs. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
No, don't finish. I just want you to put that more in perspective
Yes.
of how you would try to protect these type of programs,
Yes.
and the athletic programs too, because that has a lot to do with education as well.
You know, the question is about the investments that California has made, can make, and will make. And California has made historic investments for California students and families, not the least of which is a guarantee of preschool for every 3 and 4-year-old in our state, a free form of early education and universal transitional kindergarten for every 4-year-old in this state, regardless of immigration status, that we support all of our students, that we offer universal meals, 2 meals a day, to any hungry student. For those of you who can remember, it seems like a long time ago, during the pandemic, our schools provided more than 900 million meals to hungry families. Our child care workers, our early education workers worked in a space where there was no information, there was no PPE, and they continued to keep the doors open to solve and serve our children and our families. California makes investments unlike any other state, and we believe that that is our mission, not to abolish programs, but to expand them, to strengthen them, to find ways to get more resources to help students learn, to prepare them for great futures. We just passed a personal finance graduation requirement, so we can help our students understand how the market works and to avoid debt. You know, the U.S. Department of Education is very focused on providing support for students around financial aid, the FAFSA program, how to be able to get a college education. Abolishing the Department of Education is a threat to American students having the chance to go to college. And we're all standing together saying we were opposed to that, but we're standing for something. We're standing for public education in our pre-K through 12th grade sector and in higher education, and an opportunity for all Californians and all Americans. Sir?
It may be too early to have a list like this, but for the bills or programs that likely may be attacked the most, is there a current list that will be published so we grassroots efforts can be proactive to try and protect those programs and bills?
I wish I could tell you that bill and the bill number right now. 2 years ago, I and our team, we sponsored 20 different pieces of legislation. We see the legislative process as a way to get things done on behalf of the people. But the legislative session doesn't begin officially until the members are sworn in again on December the 1st, and then in January when the bills begin to be introduced. And so stay tuned for more updates, but at minimum, if it comes to it, as a contingency, we're prepared to introduce legislation that would back full funding for special education programs and Title I programs and programs that are similar in its scope.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Then I just want to say thank you to these great Californians who are standing here and standing up for public education. It is ironic to me that there are those who would demonize the U.S. Department of Education. By my count, the U.S. Department of Education has been putting forth programs for American students since 1980, and that those programs have included things like No Child Left Behind, and ESSA, and ESSER, and these are programs that are here to help kids. These aren't partisan acts, but this is a commitment to the bedrock of our society, giving every student a chance to get a great education. We stand against the abolishment of the U.S. Department of Education. We stand for providing great education for all students. We stand with our immigrant families, and we call on President Trump and the U.S. Congress to reaffirm your commitment to California education, to education in this great nation. Thank you so much, and onward, and let the work continue. Thank you so much, everyone.